We are back. That's all we got to say. Once a week, Austin McNorton, Nolan Brooks, Tuesday Takeover. We're still here. We're in quarantine, in the pandemic, from lovely Kansas, and of course, the classic Maryville. Mo, how's it, Mo?
It's it's cold. That storm front came through and
Does that surprise anybody?
no,
Because it
not
doesn't
really.
surprise me. I'm more shocked if it's not snowing there, honestly.
Yeah. But luckily it didn't snow. It did everything but snow. It rained, sleeted, hailed, uh, a little bit of lightning and stuff like that, but
Well, of course.
not no snow. Very windy out. That's not new either though. That's Maryville is a wind tunnel by default, so nothing new there.
Well, so everyone out there in your homes, keeping you from dying of boredom. That's what we're here for. We're bringing you the content. We're bringing you the entertainment. Last week was extremely entertaining. We did top 5 March Madness moments of all time, and we had so many greats on there that immediately take you back to I know exactly where I was, what I was doing when I watched this happen. All 10 of ours were the exact like that. Today, we are doing top 5 greatest players to play the game of college basketball of all time. Also, Nolan and I seem to have a lot of differences here, so this is going to be pretty fantastic.
Well, yeah, I thought we'd have some similarities, but you sent me your list and I read it and I went, whoa, whoa, hold
So I'm
up.
very
So
excited.
so
I'm
yeah,
very
we'll see.
excited.
We'll see.
Next week, stay tuned next week. So today we're doing best. I mean, we're looking at like stats and who we think is the best. Next week we're doing our favorites. And I know for me that will be probably a completely different 5 people. So stay tuned for next week because that's where it could potentially get kind of personal. Like it's personal moments. It's Nolan picking 5 KU players and me wrecking all 5 of them. It's that'll be fun next week. But today it's greatest of all time. We're talking goats to ever play this game. So Nolan, you led off last week, and again we're going to go the same. Nolan goes 5, I go 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, etc. Do you want to go ahead and start again, or do you want me to lead off this week?
Why don't you lead off this week?
Okay.
Because
All right.
considering how many differences I'm thinking we're about to have, I want to hear what you start with.
My list it's tough because a lot of these guys on my list also had pretty solid NBA careers. I'd say actually 4 out of the 5 had incredible NBA careers, Hall of Fame NBA careers, greatest of all time NBA careers. But they also like were so good in college too, you know. So it's so tough, and I left some out that I could have put in. Um, it was tough. It was tough doing this. So my number 5 is arguably not just the greatest player in the game of college basketball. He's the greatest player to potentially pick up a basketball. That's certainly an argument out there, and it's kind of narrowed down between 3 people, I would say. North Carolina star Michael Jordan. This is a guy who won the national championship in 1982. Unanimous selection, first team All-American in 83 and 84. This is a guy who only played 2 years of college basketball. That's why I have him at number 5, because he was only there for 2 years. If he would have stayed all 4 years, he would probably be number 1. That's how good he was. He won the Naismith Award. He won the Wooden Award in 84. You look at his stats in college. Throughout his career, he averaged 17 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. So he was a monster. And then obviously we all know what he went and did in the NBA. There's no point of even talking about that because we could spend 5 hours talking about his NBA career.
Well, yeah, there's a documentary coming out.
I was just gonna say, are you excited about that documentary coming out?
Yeah, on the 18th comes out, so I'm watching it. I already got a DVR, so. But yeah, he's probably had one of the more impressive 2-year stretches that was prepping for the NBA, because you could tell when he got there. I mean, from watching replays, obviously, because you and I were not born yet when he was playing in college basketball, but just watching replays and hearing the announcers talk about him and when his presence on the floor, it was so blatantly obvious that he was prepping for the NBA and that North Carolina was just a stop in the road because he was required to. Now, I mean, at the time, that seemed like a really good route. I mean, they were talking about, oh, he should be in the NBA. Go. Like, get out of here. Like, you're too good for this. Whereas you think about it now, it's the opposite. Like, no, you need to go to school. You need to spend a year there. What do you don't skip out on that experience. Whereas Michael, I would say in a way, even before him, you talk about like Magic Johnson had kind of started a trend of, all right, 2 years of school and then I'm out. Michael was one of the biggest products of that. And I've watched the replay of his buzzer beater so many times. My dad has
that was one of the top 5 moments.
Exactly. Well, my dad has the VCR tape of that moment.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing.
Because he's such a big Tar Heel fan, just low key.
Okay, I got you.
Tar Heel fan, big
MJ fan.
We won't tell any
other KU people. We won't let that get out.
But so yeah, it was just a really big moment. And Michael, I know a lot of people would say he was a bigger NBA star, and that's more than likely true. I would say that's true.
I would say
but he made a stardom for himself in college that was almost unmatchable in a way because he gave you a preview of what he was going to take to the NBA. Now, I know most college players do that, but it was like a whole nother level where you're like, oh, wow. So.
Yeah, that's my number 5. And I know that's think about that. Michael Jordan's number 5. So, I mean.
It's a good start.
I'm curious to see what yours is.
Well, my number 5 is Christian Laettner. And, yeah, I would put him at 5 because he had that performance of shooting 10 for 10 from the field, 10 for 10 from the free throw line in the game that he hit the shot against Kentucky to win the regional, go on, they would win the national championship, and that would be their second title in a row. So, I mean, it's almost unfathomable how well he did. And you talk about, I mean, he's broken so many tournament records, that it would take way too long to list all of them off and talk about them. I think the most impressive one I saw, though, he played in 23 total tournament games, and he won 21 out of the 23. That's got to be one of the most dominant tournament resumes I've ever heard from a player. I mean, Laettner was just on a whole nother level in college. Now, the NBA, that's a whole nother story. But in college ball, he's probably one of the most talked about college basketball players of all time just because of what he did when he was a Duke Blue Devil.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's low. I'll be honest, it's kind of low in my opinion for Christian Laettner, but that makes me even more excited to hear what your top 4 are then, if he's number 5 on your list. Yeah. All right. Number 4 for me, I'm going to go with Earvin Magic Johnson, Michigan State. He's number 4 for me. This is another 2-year guy for Michigan State, won a national championship. He won Player of the Year, all of these things. He was NCAA all-tournament team, tournament most outstanding player in that national championship season. First team All Big Ten 2 years in a row. He was a monster. Again, I think a lot of people was like, oh, well, look what he did in the NBA. But yeah, it's similar to Jordan, how everyone knew in those 2 years, it's like, you're going to do something in the NBA. Like, you're going to be special in the NBA. So I have him at number 2 because he's a Player of the Year. He won the national championship. He was the best player in the Big Ten for 2 years in a row. So Magic Johnson's number 4 for me.
Yeah, and, I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, that's not a crazy name to have there.
That's what's fun about this. There's no wrong answer for either of those.
No, there's really not. So, I mean, I think one of the most memorable documentaries I've ever watched is the Bird versus Magic documentary where they could have just shown you the NBA. And that's an entire story. But it goes all the way back to college basketball and even into a little bit of high school ball because they were playing in the same area and they had seen each other before. There are not many players that meet up like that, and that's kind of why Magic's story is so awesome in college basketball, is that it ran right alongside another legend. And so just kind of, recapping on that is insane to think about. And, Magic, like you said, and I had hinted on it before already, that he was another one of those talents where like, you're too good for college basketball, play your 2 years and go make your money and go win titles in the NBA. Go make the name for yourself that you're already making here on campus. So, yeah, Magic was I would say he was a generational talent just because of his play style and
what he did.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. The way that he did things was so different from what people were currently doing. So, yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Number 4 for you, Nolan.
All right.
I'm excited because you put Christian Laettner at 5, so I'm really excited.
Number 4, Pistol Pete Maravich.
Okay. He would probably be number 6 for me. That is incredible.
He is high. He is as high up as 4 for me, simply because of how he performed in college basketball. It really kind of goes under the table how well he played. And anytime I've watched things on him, it's all about the NBA just because of the passing things he did in the NBA. And he was translated more to a facilitator in the NBA, whereas in college, he was the guy. I mean, you look at it, 44.2 points per game.
Without a three-point line.
Without a three-point line, yeah. 6 rebounds and 5 assists per game for an entire career. His points per game was higher than his field goal percentage, which was, I think, 43.8 or something like that.
Which isn't bad at all. That's a good shooting percentage now.
43% on 44 points, that's pretty good.
It's incredible.
All the kind of bad things I've seen on his time at LSU, though, was that his dad was the coach. And so people were like, well, maybe you shouldn't really be too excited about that because his dad coached him. And his dad let him throw up 30 shots a game. So, and it's like, okay, yeah, but he still made them. It would be different if he didn't make them. He still scored 44 a game. So, I would just put him at 4 simply because that is unheard of for a guard with no three-point line.
He's my number 6. If I were to go further, he'd be number 6 for me because his stats are ridiculous. Without a three-point line, I think that's a big key of note. I think one thing that hurts him is he didn't win. Like, if he would have won a title or something, then he'd be in everyone's 5, no doubt. But since he didn't win, I think everyone's like, he was just a stat grabber. He didn't. But, think about the circumstances. Are you kidding me? If someone did that now, they would literally be number 1.
Well, that's like calling Wilt Chamberlain a stat grabber. Wouldn't it? Come on, man. Yeah, he was a bigger and better athlete than most of the competition, but he still had to make it.
Clearly, they couldn't stop the guy. You knew he was going to shoot it, and he still would make it. So
exactly. So, yeah,
incredible.
Pete Maravich, number 4.
Oh man, that's good. Wow, we're just rolling through some legends here. Speaking of, number 3, let's go with Larry Legend. You brought him up. Of course, Indiana State. And that's, to me, what puts him over Magic because, Nolan, you brought it up. They were in the exact same timeline. They pretty much competed against each other always. Obviously, the biggest one is the national championship and then the entire 1980s, 10 years of the NBA. Matched up against each other in pretty much every finals you can think of. Whenever one wasn't, the other was, and they both were a lot of the times. So this is what puts Larry over Magic for me. Larry played for Indiana State. He played for a Missouri Valley team who didn't anybody and haven't really been anything since. I mean, you think about it. And this guy averaged 30 a game, and he averaged 5 assists, 3 steals, and let's see how many and 13 rebounds. So this is a guy who averaged 30 and 14 essentially a game, also with 3 steals and 6 assists. Are you kidding me? This guy was the true guy. I think so. You talked about how Magic kind of ended things, play style. Larry did too, because he was essentially like a power forward that played point guard. He would bring the ball up and he was their best shooter, but he would back you down in the paint and you weren't going to stop him. Like, that's how good he was. He was like one of the first, I think, players that we can say he could play every position. He was one of those guys who could truly do that. Him and Magic both, really. So that's why I give Larry the slight edge over Magic in their college years, because Larry played for Indiana State for one, and he could literally do it all and no one would stop him. So, I mean, Larry Legend is 3 for me. And I know like my first 3 here have all been NBA Hall of Famers, but they were just so good in college too that I gotta put him in there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you at all. I would put Magic above Larry, just because of how they won more than Larry did. But yeah, Larry Bird was probably the most perfect example of a stretch 4 before that was even talked about. And it was going to be a long, long time before they started bringing up the term stretch 4.
And now everyone's a stretch 4 in the NBA.
Exactly. So, he was a stretch 4 before there were stretch 4s. Exactly. And, if you talk about it, one of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time, one of the greatest scorers of all time, so consistent. Oh, yeah. And it looked like it was a train wreck of a play style, but it would always work and it would always go in. And exactly. He'd throw behind the head passes.
Never pretty. It wasn't as flashy or anything like that.
No, it wasn't pretty at all. It wasn't, maybe it wasn't always accurate. But when it was, oh man, you had to talk about it. Throwing behind the head passes and it would land perfectly on the dot. I mean, there's not many guys that can do that. So, I mean, you're right. He translated the game in the same way that Magic did, and that's why their stories are almost identical. Yep. They run side by side, literally from beginning to end. And so this kind of talking about that's why I would put Magic up above, just because he did it just a little, just not by much, just a little bit better in college ball.
That's fair. I don't think anyone will disagree with you.
No. All right.
You're number 3.
My number 3, Mr. Bill Walton. Now,
gosh, that's a good one.
Our generation has grown up watching him be a total goofball as a broadcaster. I mean, I watched one, I think it was the Oregon-Arizona game, and he was broadcasting, and he's talking about how he brings a jar of peanut butter to every broadcast. Like that, that's what we've grown up seeing, but
he's quite a character.
Yeah. But if you go back and you look at how he played when he was, oh man, at UCLA, 2 30-0 teams while he was there. 88-game win streak, back-to-back titles in 72 and 73. I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I don't even want to look at his stats. You don't need to talk about the stats, because there's your proof right there. There's what the stats led to. So, I mean, Bill Walton was a part of that great UCLA John Wooden run.
Yep.
He was a part of that. And so to even think that he wouldn't be on this list is just, it's like,
that's really good.
One of the most winning basketball players of all time at UCLA, and just prove to you that if you're going to lead 2 30-0 teams and be the captain and win those national titles like you do, then you got to be on this list. And Bill Walton, deservingly number 3 for me.
That's really good. Was he the number 1 pick in the draft?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that. I believe so.
I think he probably was because he played for Portland. I know in the NBA.
Yeah, he played for Portland. But I mean, his NBA career, almost for like in my experience, from what I've seen, his NBA career is nowhere near what his college career was.
Right. That's really that's a really good one. Gosh. All right, number 2 for me, since we're talking about Bill Walton, number 2 for me is Lou Alcindor, otherwise known as Kareem. This is kind of the reason I didn't have Bill Walton, because for me, when I think of UCLA, when I think of John Wooden, I think of Kareem. I think of Lou Alcindor. Bill Walton's kind of the other guy who played for that John Wooden team for me. Still incredible, no doubt. He's in everyone's top 10 ever. But Kareem is the guy for me when I think UCLA, when I think Los Angeles really as a whole. He's that guy. Yeah. Because he was unstoppable. I mean, what this guy did in college was just as incredible as what he did in the what he did in the NBA, really. I mean, he averaged 26 a game, 16 rebounds, if you can believe that. Obviously, he has the most unstoppable shot literally ever, with the sky hook. And the amount of accolades that this guy won is – the list would take too long for me to read. Obviously, consensus All-American first team. He won the Naismith Award. He won the AP Player of the Year, All Pac-12 first team, NCAA tournament most outstanding player. It's just – ridiculous. I mean, for all of you out there listening/watching this right now, go look at this guy's stats from college too, because obviously everyone knows he leads the NBA in scoring. But go look at what he did in college too, because he's probably statistically, he's the most dominant player to play this game in college and the NBA. So Lou Alcindor is what he was in UCLA. Number 2 on my list. That's why I didn't have Bill Walton, because when I think UCLA, when I think of John Wooden, I think of Lou Alcindor.
Yeah, so that's fair. I mean, it's not crazy to think about. That's why Kareem's in the conversation for the greatest basketball player of all time. Right. And that's where you have to bring into consideration his collegiate career alongside his NBA career. His NBA career was phenomenal. But if you include his collegiate career, oh, man, it might not even be close.
No, if you include his college and NBA, he's probably the greatest player ever.
Exactly. So, I mean, Kareem, at the time, like we've been saying, Lou Alcindor,
yes,
was phenomenal. He was Wilt Chamberlain 2.0.
Yes, he was.
And I don't know if you watched the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar documentary on HBO, but he worked out with Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep.
Because Wilt Chamberlain was his idol, and that's who they were. They grew up as almost in a way they were considered outcasts because of how big of athletes they were and how dominant they were. But they made it the best of it and turned it into a phenomenal career. So, yeah, I agree with it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I said this already. If he's not in your top 2, I mean, come on.
Exactly. He's got to be.
All right. Are you ready for a surprise?
I am. I've been waiting. You've been teasing it the whole time. I'm very excited.
Compose myself. Okay. Number 2 on my list, Sabrina Ionescu from Oregon women's basketball. Now, I know this is a newer addition to this list, but I would call her the greatest female college player, or one of. But the reason she makes number 2 for me, she is the only Division I athlete for basketball to score 2,000 points, dish 1,000 assists, and grab 1,000 rebounds. Now think about that. Think about who we just talked about. He didn't do that.
No, he did not.
Kareem didn't do it, and she did. So for that very reason, to become the only D1 player to eclipse those marks, she's got to be number 2 as the greatest college basketball player of all time. She has to be.
I love that pick so much. I think definitely in my top. When I think of women's basketball, I think Brianna Stewart for me, I think of because UConn's a powerhouse and
you could pick a bunch of
their best
UConn
player
players.
ever. Yeah. Oh yeah. But the stats that honestly, like out of all the like things that have been canceled and everything, felt the most for her. Out of all the players in the nation, I literally felt the most for her because the sole reason that she even came back to play at all is because she said she was going to win a championship with Oregon. She'd already be in the WNBA tearing it up. The only reason that she's still in Oregon is because she was going to win a national championship. She was that good and that determined. And then it all got canceled. I felt the most for her. I'm so glad that she's number 2. That's incredible. I mean, the stats back it up, though. I got to admit, the stats back it up. Jeez, especially when you put it against Kareem like that. That's just –
Woo, excuse me.
All right. The moment you've all been waiting for, people. Now, I think if you were to kind of guess, if you've been listening all the way, you could kind of guess where Nolan's headed, where I'm headed. My number 1 is Christian Laettner. Now, like I said, this is not our favorites. This is who I think's the best. He would not be my number 1 favorite, of course. I mean, the dude has a documentary about him called I Hate Christian Laettner. So there's that. But you know why people hate him, Nolan? Because he was the best. Because there was nothing he couldn't do, and he was so dominant. And the reason that I have him number 1 is because when I think of college basketball, I think when a lot of people think of college basketball, they think of Christian Laettner. Because he didn't really do anything in the NBA. He was so good in college. Think about this. He was so good in college that he made the dream team in the Olympics with Jordan, Barkley, the list goes on, Magic, Larry Bird, all the guys that I've already mentioned. He was on that team because he was so good in college. Think about that. When is that? He played for literally the greatest basketball team of all time because of how good he was in college. He's my number 1. Like the accolades, the tournament accolades especially. Everyone hated him because he beat them. That's what it comes down to. And when I think of college basketball, I think when a lot of people think of college basketball, they think of Christian Laettner. Whereas you think of Jordan, NBA. Kareem, NBA. Magic, Larry Bird, all NBA. Of course. When you think of Christian Laettner, you think, oh, Duke. God, I hated when he played for college basketball and made that shot against Kentucky. Everyone knows it. He's number 1 for me. I'm sorry if that pains you. He was your number 5, but he's my definite number 1.
Oh, man. Well, okay.
I don't know why you disagree. I don't know how you could disagree.
I would not call him the greatest college basketball player of all time.
I think
he's on the list, obviously. He's a number 5 for me, but I put people above him.
That's fine.
I personally would. It's okay.
I would not.
It's okay.
It is okay.
All right, well, I'm keeping it short and sweet. My number 1, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
All right, good show. We'll see you next week.
But yeah, Kareem has to be. I mean, but what else do you say? 88-2 at UCLA.
Yeah.
Would have won 4 national titles if freshmen weren't up. Because freshmen were not allowed to play up on the varsity team at the time.
Yep.
Come on. There's no other NCAA player that basically has a title in every single year they played.
That's true.
Come on. So,
That's
I mean,
true.
obvious reasons. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, numero uno for me.
I mean, like I said, if he's not in your top 2, then something's wrong. Because the stats back it up, the wins back it up, the rings back it up. The biggest difference for me is when I think college basketball, I think Christian Laettner. And with Kareem, you could say he's the best NBA player of all time, not just college. So I can't disagree necessarily because all the stats and accolades and everything, the list goes on and on and on. He's a legend. He's a beast. He was unguardable. All of these guys were unguardable. All of my five. All right, so let's wrap it up. Your five again from 5 to 1.
Number 5, Christian Laettner. Probably one of the greatest Duke Blue Devils of all time. Number 4, Pistol Pete Maravich, the greatest LSU player of all time. Shaquille O'Neal's coming close. That's another story for another day. Number 3, Bill Walton, probably one of the greatest UCLA Bruins of all time.
Yep.
Part of the John Wooden magical run. Number 2, Sabrina Ionescu, greatest female college basketball player, or one of. Only D1 player to do 2,000 points, 1,000 assists, 1,000 rebounds. And number 1, Lou Alcindor, otherwise known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, greatest 5 college basketball players of all time for me.
And I got Jordan, Magic, Larry Legend, Kareem, and Christian Laettner in that order. So, gosh, these are just incredible lists. A lot of these guys had incredible NBA careers. Sabrina Ionescu is going to have one of the best WNBA careers that I think we're ever going to see because she can do it all, like Nolan was just saying, clearly. Gosh, I wish I could have seen a lot of these players play. All 5 of my guys I never got to actually see play. So next week, though, all 5 of my guys will be guys that I have seen and are my favorites of all time. So stay tuned for that because top 5 favorite college basketball players of all time. Nolan and I will probably have drastically different lists, and I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited.
Oh, all right. We will see you next week. Everyone stay safe. Nolan, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, everybody. Keep washing your hands. Stay inside. Good hygiene leads to the end of the coronavirus, okay? We got to get through this so that we get sports back.
Yes.
We're close. Please. Let's do this together.
Hold on for a little bit longer.
It's almost, I can feel it.
We're bringing you the entertainment next week. We'll see you then.